According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, feudalism is defined as a social system that existed in Europe during the 9th through 13th centuries in which people worked and fought for nobles who gave them land and protection in return. Feudalism began in the 9th century at the start of the Middle Ages. One of the main early inspirations for the feudal system was Charles Martel, aka the Hammer. He gave his soldiers land so that they might be able to support themselves financially while they fought wars with him. After a while, these soldiers began to be known as vassals. Vassal is defined as a person who received protection and land from a lord in return for loyalty and service. This system was so effective for Martel that many barons and lords adopted his system. These barons gave fiefs, or documents that granted strips of land, to vassals. Barons also changed Martel's system in order to defend against Germanic tribes like the Vikings and Visigoths, who were invading most of Europe. Because of these invasions, the Carolingian Empire, the empire of Charles Martel, fell in 888 CE. Due to this event, people became even more scared of invaders and needed even more defense. Soon, a system of defense was added to Martel's feudal system that integrated knights. This new system of defense allowed Alfred the Great to defend Wessex from invading Germanic tribes in the 9th century. His successful defense of Wessex encouraged others to adopt this new feudal system, and feudalism expanded to even more areas. It expanded to the point where feudalism became the default system of defense for areas in Europe, like Spain, Italy, and Germany. As defense became more effective, barons and lords were able to focus more on developing their respective manners and the people inside of them. The feudal system became a basic hierarchy with 4 levels. This is referred to as the feudal pyramid. At the top rested the king, who had complete power over his kingdom and everyone in it. All decisions were made by him, and his word was final. Directly underneath the king were the lords. They were given fiefs by the king and told to govern it. The kings and the lords made up the section of the feudal pyramid that wielded the most power. Due to the size of these lords' fiefs, they had trouble ruling them efficiently. So in order to more effectively govern, they handed out even smaller parts of their fiefs to knights. These knights would not only defend the lord's fief, but would also rule the fief given to them. The ones who lived under a knight's rule were the peasants and serfs. Peasants were given fiefs from knights to farm in exchange for protection. These are the 4 levels of the feudal pyramid.
King is the vassal of God, and the king is the lord of the duke. The duke is the vassal of the king, and the king is the vassal of God. God's the lord of us all. We run all the way down through earls and barons, and all the way down to the knight. And everyone's a vassal, even the king, to God, and everyone is the lord of somebody, except the serfs, who, well, they're not. They're just up there grinding it out. There's not a day in the life of a serf that is not somehow tied up to producing food, because without it, they starve. And sometimes they do.
Each level received fiefs from the level above them, and were ruled by the level above them. In order for a vassal to receive a fief, he had to swear 2 oaths to the one who gave it to him. These were the oath of loyalty and the oath of homage. In an oath of homage, a vassal agreed to love all which he loves and shun all which he shuns, he being the lord, and to never do anything unpleasing to him. In return for swearing these oaths to his lord, a vassal would receive protection from his lord via the lord's knights. Knights were also sworn to their lord through these oaths. They swore to protect their lord and his fief from any threat.
His duty is to master the art of arms, and their duty is to fight for their lord.
The knight's main responsibility was to protect the lord against barbarians. However, while diligent knights were off fighting the barbarians, some lazy kings would do absolutely nothing to help. Charles VII is one such king who didn't accomplish much in his period of rule. Knights also defended their own fiefs and the peasants and the serfs that worked on them. These peasants had their own responsibilities to uphold for their lord. Some of these responsibilities included being in a lord's court when called upon, giving money to a lord when he needed it, going into battle for his lord, and feeding his own family and his lord's family. Surprisingly, that last requirement was the most demanding.
The peasants, the serfs, they are responsible for producing the food that is going to feed the knight and his family, everyone up the feudal chain.
When William the Conqueror and his humongous household traveled during Christmas time, they consumed 10,000 eels, 6,000 chickens, 1,000 rabbits, 200 geese, 90 boars, 50 peacocks, thousands of eggs and bread loaves, and hundreds of wine casks, all of which had to be provided by the peasants and serfs. Peasants bore almost all of the work in feudal society. Because of this, some peasants became greedy and decided to get more wealth and power by taking fiefs from multiple lords. They then hired their own serfs to farm the land for them. This complicated the responsibilities of the lower class in the feudal system by branching out from the traditional and structured feudal pyramid.
In England, for instance, you have the nobility, and you have the middle class, and you have lower class. But there is a class between the nobility and the middle class called the gentry. And some of them have the title Sir, some do not. And it's a class where the two blend together. So the middle class, you've got the upper middle class, which is blending into the gentry, and you've got the lower middle class. There are divisions of each one of the classes. It's not cut and dry.
This new and more complex system of responsibilities led to the saying, "The lord of my lord is not my lord." This meant that a vassal only owed loyalty to the lord he swore an oath to, not the ones above his lord. In turn, vassals became more loyal to their individual lords. When lords fought each other for power, the vassals would loyally follow them into battle. This led to kingdoms being split into smaller regions, each ruled by its own lord. All of this caused much confusion among feudalism and its participants. While the responsibilities became confused in feudalism due to this second tier of lords, the rights remained the same as before.
In terms of rights, the rights of the vassals were typically the responsibilities of the lord, and the rights of the lord were typically the responsibilities of the vassals. For example, it was a vassal's responsibility to come to a lord's court when he was called. Therefore, it is the lord's right to call his vassals to his court.
The fact that the rights of one were the responsibilities of the other was one of the main reasons why feudalism was so effective. It connected every level of the feudal pyramid for very selfish reasons. For example, if peasants worked for a lord, then they earned protection from any and all invaders. But if a lord hired peasants, then he got workers to farm his land so that he could get more money. So each level in the pyramid had its own reasons to be obligated to every other level. Feudalism was a system of mutual obligation and responsibility. Along with these responsibilities came a universal allegiance to the Catholic Church. The Church often meddled in the political and disciplinary aspects of feudalism.
The church plays a very vital role in the whole system. In fact, in the beginning, clergymen are actually involved in the feudal chain. And at Battle of Hastings, there were Odo Bishop of Bayeux, for instance, wore chainmail underneath his Eucharistic vestments, and always used a mace to dispatch his enemies, because a clergyman's not supposed to shed blood, but you can crack somebody's skull. So yes, the church is very much involved in feudalism.
The leaders of the church often raised themselves to political power by controlling a king. This was exemplified by Pope Gregory VII when he and King Henry IV disagreed on lay investiture, which was the act of a king appointing clergy to the church. Pope Gregory excommunicated King Henry from the church. This act depressed Henry so much that he crawled to the Pope in the bitter cold asking for forgiveness. This shows just how much power the church had in feudalism. All of these things amount to the feudal system. The feudal system was one of heavy mutual obligation and allegiances between people. Each level in the feudal pyramid had its own responsibilities to uphold and its own rights. These rights and responsibilities are the glue that held Europe together during this time period, which was full of barbarian invasion and wars. Feudalism is the reason that Europe survived the Middle Ages. It is the reason that European civilization was saved.